Mental Liberation, an Iron March publication. Chapter 5, Addressing Objections. The path we have outlined above, that of the fascist revolutionary, is perhaps the hardest one to walk in this world. As such, we can expect most people to frantically come up with rationalizations to avoid admitting that it's the right path to tread, in order to justify to themselves the far easier path they are currently on. While most people are not cut out for the fascist revolutionary struggle, some may simply have a mental block that could be broken with enough pressure. As such, we've included a list of objections, rationalizations really, that are likely to come up in response to the ideas and suggestions in the rest of this manual. So here's a number of quotes. So, objection number 1. Materialism is a good thing. We don't want to believe in fairy tales. There's nothing wrong with the material world. Matter in and of itself is meaningless, and the attitude that the material world is all there is exactly the reason why we find ourselves in the current state of affairs. Just like a human being is more than simply the sum of organs, likewise life is more than the sum of its bare material components. We don't reject the material world, we acknowledge it, but we also do not glorify it, giving it unwarranted value. Objection number 2. The growth our society has experienced means we can't possibly be poisoned. Technological and material growth are actually the biggest contributors to degeneracy unless society learns to adapt to new means of life in a way that doesn't make people lazy, narcissistic, entitled, etc. This growth is not bad in and of itself, but it is by no means proof of a lack of poison. Objection number 3. You say the lies are very ancient. Then you want to go back to ancient times? I don't want to live in a mud hut. I like modernity. We want to restore the ancient world view, a particular outlook on life that implies people having a certain character. Such character can exist in a technologically advanced society. Make new tech, keep old ways, that is our direction. Objection number 4. If I live in the system, then how can I tell what is or is not degenerate, poisoned, Judaic, etc.? Once you comprehend that there are only two major worldviews, one centered around truth and another centered around the lack of truth, you will be able to easily make the distinctions between what is and isn't degenerate. If something is geared towards fulfilling only certain interests, materialistic needs and desires, then it most certainly belongs to the worldview of lies and is thus degenerate. In the worldview of truth, everything is geared towards discovering, upholding, and realizing the truth in all matters, including human affairs, regardless of what that means for any given individual. Degeneracy comes from the glorification of man in and of himself and in his purely animalistic aspects, as opposed to overcoming and conquering the material, animalistic side of man in the name of truth. Objection number 5. How can you tell what history is wrong or right? You weren't there. The truth is something timeless and eternal. It exists regardless of our interests, our actions, and even regardless of time itself. Thus we can judge any period of time by comparing it with the truth. So could and will be able to anyone else living in any other point in time, past or future. Objection number 6. So you promote a neat life? No education, employment, or training. We promote a fascist lifestyle and establish oneself as a fascist revolutionary, neither of which is possible if you are slaving away for the system. Ultimately, one can learn a trade, a practical service skill, and become self-employed because such things as welding and plumbing will always be in demand, but they are not as prestigious to the system and implies less entanglement in its web. Ideally, one has to become completely self-reliant to make an exodus from the system altogether. Those who are actively involved in the current economic system through office jobs and the like are dependent on the system and thus are useless in taking it down. If avoiding being a slave is the neat life, then yes, we are promoting that. Think people who have universally necessary skills that will become in high demand after the revolution will have anything holding them back in destroying the system? No. Think people who have universally necessary skills that will become in high demand after the revolution will have anything holding them back in destroying the system? No. Objection number 7. So what if I learn a trade? I'm still paying system taxes. Until such a time when you are ready for a full-on exodus from the system, yes. However, you will be paying less than those who are willfully enslaved to the system by engaging it on its terms. not to mention that certain tactics may demand you to go on with this minimized engagement in order to acquire certain necessary resources for the struggle. In other words, if we have to pay taxes, then let it be a means to an end rather than a fee for playing further into the system's hands. Objection number, 8 now? Aren't you just a lazy person with no work ethic? Not being a slave is not the same as being lazy or without work ethic. If anything, the system actively spits on hard, working people, demeaning hard manual labor and praising abstract intellectual masturbating and economic manipulation as real jobs. A slave is someone who is ready to do anything just for the sake of earning his daily bread to survive. By that standard, modern people are even less than slaves, as they are ready to do any job so as to later waste that earned money. Working jobs we hate so much. We hate so we can buy things we don't need. Real work ethic is in the hands of people who do what they love, and in their dedication to that task turn it into a craft, elevating mere work to art, as opposed to the slave who is just trying to fulfill the bare minimum that is required of him. Modern world has killed real work ethic, and to add cynicism, and modern defenders of the working class are intellectuals who detest actual labor. The revolution will allow us to create a society where true work ethic will rule again and allow workers to be the masters of their own domain, returning dignity to their craft and to them as craftsmen. However, for the revolution to happen, we need revolutionaries and not slaves. Another objection. Humans are social animals. We can't just ignore the pressure from other people and be independent. That is why the mass approach is not feasible, as majority of people will not be able to dedicate themselves to the revolutionary cause. They can be expected to join in only once the system is all but dead, because then they can shift their allegiances and the former enforced social pressure mechanism will be gone. Only true revolutionaries, fanatics to the cause, can stand above society and against the system, even when completely alone. If you can't hack it, then perhaps you are not as fanatical as you'd like to think. Another objection. You say the worst the system can do is kick you out, but that means certain death. We can't survive without the system. We need to take it over instead. Once again, if you can't hack it, then maybe you're not a real revolutionary. Being kicked out is not certain death. Moreover, that is the worst the system can do if you openly go against its rules. But when you engage it in active struggle, the worst it can do at that point is outright kill you. Death is a constant possibility in the life of a revolutionary, and as Sergei Genadivich, Genadiev, Nechayev, Nechayev, once wrote, "The revolutionary is a doomed man." And that's it. Yet we come from the worldview where we seek to abandon fear, overcome pain, laugh in the face of danger, and constantly dance with death. If you are not ready to commit to this, then it is hardly any wonder that you are drawn in by the allure of the system's safe and secure game, where you may live, but will always ultimately be the loser. This line gets quoted all too often, but it is likewise quickly forgotten when people are asked to commit. It is better to die standing than to live on your knees. Another objection. How do you expect to recruit anybody when you're so extreme and promote dropping out of society? We don't want to recruit just anybody. Anybody isn't good enough and will be rejected outright. It is said that beggars can't be choosers, but we are neither. We are demanders. Trying to appeal to people is begging, promising them rewards like an election campaign is begging. Choosing is saying, well, it's better than nothing, when presented with shitty choices of volunteers. We are demanders. We demand that people who wish to join are of a certain caliber, and if they are not, then we demand that they shape up until they meet these expectations. If these demands scare people away, then all the better, because the only people who will be scared away are those who would have been of no use to the struggle in the first place and would likely turn tail at the first sign of trouble. We don't go out begging to people. We wait for people to come to us, but when they do, we don't settle like choosers. We demand the best, because only the best will be capable of victory. Another objection. Aren't fascists supposed to promote order? Why do you want to wreak havoc on society? Society is already in havoc and disorder. It may have a purely mechanical order to it in the form of laws and law enforcement and various institutions that keep it going, but all of that exists to help spread poison and further decay. A purely mechanical order is not good enough for us fascists. We strive for a specific kind of order, an organic order that is healthy, full of life and vitality, and none of that is possible with the existing mechanical leviathan known as the system suffocating anything life-asserting. We must destroy this machine if we want something organic to grow from its ashes. Another objection. You should be thankful you live in a democratic country with free speech. In a fascist society, you'd be immediately arrested. We are fascists. In a fascist society, we'd be loyal and law-abiding servants, and our views would coincide with those of the society around us. We'd be part of an organic order we desire, and thus have no need to rebel against anything. Just like the system pats on the head its obedient slaves, so would the fascist state reward its loyal champions. Another objection. No, if we just have the right approach, we could get a nationalist party elected. Einstein once said that the definition of madness is when you try to do the same thing over and over and expect different results. How many times must we step on the same rake before we realize that it only leads to a smack in the face? Another objection. Even if parties can't succeed, they're pushing the overton window to the right, therefore it's valuable work. Rocking the boat is not good enough because as the boat rocks one way, it can rock the other, and thus you'd be back where you started from, going back and forth with no real progress made. Our goal is not to rock the boat, our goal is to sink it. That's straight out of Siege. Another objection. The white genocide slogans are really effective propaganda. To say that it's effective, you have to specify what it's effective at. The problems of today have two sides, the side doing the genociding and the side being a victim. The victimhood propaganda isn't affecting those who are doing the victimizing. They already know what they're doing, and by and large, the masses of people already know they're getting screwed. They just don't do anything about it. So reminding people that they're getting screwed over is relying on the false notion that the masses will wake up and do something. They won't. Only individuals act, not masses. Effective propaganda is propaganda that fulfills a precise goal, not vaguely tries to wake up the masses of people. Another objection. No, we need the masses. A small movement can't beat the system. It's too large. All historic revolutions were done by a small group of capable fanatics with the masses joining in only when victory of the revolutionaries was assured. Breivik, all on his own, put the capital of Norway on total lockdown and was free to act elsewhere. A handful of people like him can cause entire cities to come to a dramatic standstill. A few hundred can beat the system. Another objection. So you want us to be like niggers who don't work? Unlike them, we can't live on welfare. Niggers simply wish to avoid work altogether. We wish to avoid slavery so as to be free in our actions to take down the system that enforces that slavery on our race, yet lets niggers off the hook. Another objection. Speaking of niggers, they are the ones who get violent. Why should we stoop down to their level? Back in Rockwell's time, this argument would have been legitimate for the reasons we discussed earlier in this manual, namely that it was a different time with different options available to us, and that Rockwell was representing a mode of respectability that was still around but on its way out. Now, as we are drawn closer and closer to the extinction of our race, radical actions are not only permissible, they are necessary, and will ultimately be the only choice left available to us, lest you count rolling over and dying as a legitimate choice. Moreover, nowadays, when the destruction of the system is imperative, nigger chimp-outs are only paying in our favor. The more pressure is put on the system by others, the better for us, as we can serve our own strength for hitting it where it'll really hurt, and once we take over, we'll be able to deal with anyone who opposes us in any way we see fit. Another objection. Everyone around here is a stupid commie. I can't find fascists. No, you won't find fascists, and it's mostly foolish to expect it. You will probably have to create your entourage with work and education. Build a community with your own leadership. There aren't any pre-made fascist social circles you can join and fit in without effort. That is no excuse to remain isolated and antisocial. Most people are lemmings who will follow you if you have the courage to lead. And the few who have potential to be true revolutionaries won't meet you by chance if you avoid all socialization. Another objection. We want to destroy the system. There's no time to waste lifting weights or getting rid of your TV. If you're already a full-time revolutionary working effectively to undermine the system and building your resistance force, then you can safely ignore all the advice in this section. This book wasn't written with you in mind. Otherwise, you've already wasted every other year of your life without doing anything, and probably did it while consuming endless entertainment, growing frail in the process. Another objection. Attending events just to convert people is creepy and autistic. Everything should just happen naturally. Yes, ideally, everyone around you should naturally absorb your worldview on things because they respect and admire you and like being around you. If this didn't happen yet, then there's obviously something wrong, and it's time to do something about it. Either you're not likable, or you fail to express your feelings and ideas about the world to other people. Either way, following the socialization steps will allow you opportunities to work on that. Another objection. It's stupid to stop having fun. Whoever said being fascist required not watching TV or playing video games? Those things don't matter. What matters is engaging in real-life activism. George Lincoln Rockwell once said that a man needs to do... There's two do's here. That a man needs to do what is right according to his conscience, and have as much fun as possible while doing it. The point here is not to become a monk and cut out all worldly pleasures. The point is to cut out the things that make us passive, that turn us into human slugs. Instant pleasure, on tap, with no pain or discomfort required. It makes you into a slave to the system that provides this easy pleasure. Find fun that's under your control instead. Play football, bake a pie, carve a statue with your knife. You can engage in activism while remaining hooked to the system's pleasure media, but it'll prevent you from going as far as you'll need to go. Another objection. Just because you have leadership, people won't drop out of the system to fight in a revolution. No, most people won't. Only a tiny minority will follow you, even if you do everything right. However, no one will follow an asocial loner who doesn't talk to people. Leadership is a necessity, and if you don't have it, you won't be able to develop it by practicing on revolutionary types. Become a leader of average people first. Another objection. Learning boxing won't help you if the system cracks down on you. Even guns won't allow you to take on the government. This manual is titled Mental Liberation. The purpose of physical training, including martial arts, is primarily to liberate yourself from the mental shackles that prevent action. Eating vitamins and minerals won't allow you to take on the government either, but still comes recommended. Muscles are a source of power, both mental and physical. Notice how dedicated leftists are mostly commonly frail or obese. This isn't a coincidence. There is a strong inverse correlation between muscle mass and liberalism. Publicly proclaiming to be a fascist or even simply conservative demands strength, courage, and energy in today's world, which fit people have far more of, on average, than others. Do it. Another objection. My XYZ entertainment is the only thing that allows me to cope, man. You can't take that away from me. You coping is exactly the source of the problem. As long as you cope, things won't change. It's time to stop coping and start doing something about the problem. The best cure for being depressed and angry at the world is to know you're doing something to change things in a dramatic way. Another objection. I know better than you what kind of physical training to do. I don't want to do powerlifting. If you're as fit and strong as you'd like to be, then keep doing whatever it is you're doing, of course. Otherwise, what you're doing is obviously not working. So start powerlifting instead of rationalizing. Powerlifting always works. Nothing works as well or best. That concludes Chapter 5, Mental Liberation.